This is an actual transport work group, so we will be doing transporty things today. I'm Paul, and we'll just dig into the first part since it's a work group meeting. Read the antitrust statement. RESO strives to increase competition in the marketplace and will not be a forum for anti-competitive conduct. The RESO antitrust policy governs the activities of RESO and its members, including this meeting. A link to the policy was emailed to you with the meeting agenda. Please consult RESO's counsel if you have any questions about the policy. In the formal schedule, we're showing up, or the agenda, we're showing up as two separate sessions. We've mashed them together. We will take the break so everyone can get checked out on time. And here's our agenda for today. We've got about 6 items that we're going to go through. But before we do that, I got a couple other things to talk about. One of the wonderful things about these meetings is we get people like Dan who says, I'm really irritated by this, and he's obviously busy now. But during this session, the fall conference, he went out and wrote some code to generate a simple ER diagram that will show the relationship between the different resources that we've created in the data dictionary by pulling from either a link or a spreadsheet. So that was very cool that he did it. Of course, I believed Dan, but then I had to go and try it, and I stuck it into something where you can actually scroll around and look at them up close. Super easy to do, and you can probably do it inside of your IDE. So definitely check it out. We'll post up the link to Dan's GitHub repository where he's got that. A couple other little things I wanted to point out before we got into the meat of this. We've also got a meta model that Sergio put together that we're going to include in some materials that shows the relationship between our resources, in this case a model, the fields in it, lookup resources, and model relationship. Also kind of cool. And that's all in support of some work Josh has been doing to push forward a technical real estate data education course for people new to the industry, people who need a refresher, help your technical staff with tons and tons of material that I think is really going to help a lot of people understand some of the things. I had some questions from people as we went around in the last 2 days, and it really highlighted some of the, we've got a lot of information, it's in a lot of places, and not everyone's having the ability to find it, so hopefully this will help them understand some of those parts and help make it easier for them to find it as things go forward. And then finally, where's that one? I believe it's here. We all know this. Josh shows this every time, and I just wanted to show something that we usually look at this part, and you can actually zoom out if my fingers work. And oddly enough, there's people all around the world starting to use this. And we heard questions about why are we paying any attention to other places? Well, in one sense, it's a validation of the work that we're doing, having value and people recognizing that. So I think it's really kind of cool that the work we do can have such a wide impact. All right, let's get back to the regularly scheduled part of this, which I hope is, all right, here. Is that where this is? Oh, uh-oh, now I've lost it. Give me a second. I think it's here. There it is. Okay. All right. And this is also meant to be an interactive work group session. So we'll take questions from the audience. Jason will be keeping track of any information from the live stream and sort of waving his hand at me, and I'll pause and answer those questions. Before we get into our agenda, I'm going to do the usual thank you to the people who make this all happen. Again, this was another wonderful conference. So thanks to the RESO staff in particular. You did another wonderful job. And apparently, our technical staff over on the side there rebuilt the stage last night because there was an accident and had to rebuild all of this overnight. So that's pretty cool. So thank you very much. All right, let's move into this then. So I see most of you know all about transport. We're just going to go really quickly through this part. We've got a number of subgroups. Lots of the people who've been working in this have been working together for many, many years, and it can seem a little bit intimidating to come in and start interacting with the group. But I'd really encourage you to try to get over that initial hurdle and start participating. The people who are involved in transport that I know quite well, I'm sure there's a similar group in Data Dictionary, are really passionate about the standard and really want new people to come and join and share that passion, and that intimidation can be a barrier to you joining and participating. So please try to get past that. We try to be welcoming, but sometimes we dive right into the weeds and people can't keep up, and so you can always ask us, hey, could you explain that? And I'm sure someone will talk your ear off on that particular topic. We do have different subgroups underneath transport. The one that probably impacts the most people directly is the certification subgroup, where the rules for testing Data Dictionary and transport are written. So every time Data Dictionary does work, eventually it winds up in the certification subgroup, and they ensure that there are rules to help make that happen. There's the analytics work group that you saw with the diagram, the map of the world. That's part of the things they do there, but more importantly, they actually bring up statistics around how certification is going. Activity Pub work group, we heard some talk from Chris Horan yesterday, and I think this is going to have some more interest and more impact for people in the near term, because they have carved out a really good business case that they're going to start working on an implementation design, if you will, with a more limited set of information. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but there's more like the offers section of it looks like something that could be quite straightforward and high impact and business value. We have a couple of other ones and some new ones. We really like using the letter U a lot, and we have several unique identifier type sets already, and we're going to add a few more to them, and we're going to be trying to encourage people in industry to use them where they're appropriate. And the final one, which is another new work group, is the schools and geographies. There are standards out there, bodies that collect information out there that we can use to give us lists of schools across the nation, and the different geographies that we might use to define different areas in the continental US for sure, but also elsewhere. So we're going to get those guys going, and they will be helping create new bits of data that we can use. So we've spent a lot of what we did from the past year, I would say, is ironing out how things work in our workflow, but the overall view of it hasn't changed at all. It starts from R&D or pain points or discussion points within the work group, leads to a discussion on GitHub inside of the RESO Git repository. Anybody, as it says, you should all be able to access it, be able to post, ask questions, interact, and move things forward. When the work group has discussed this quite a bit, usually at meetings like this, usually over Zoom, we then move it to a change proposal, and then we vote it to move it forward. Those RCPs that get adopted eventually go to the board after we have 2 verified implementations, and they would ratify it, and then it would become part of our standard. We have quite a bit of work ongoing, but we also have a couple that have slipped by the side as we've worked through some of the policy changes that we've been talking about. We've got a number of them that we need to review and revisit. Of the ones that I think are most impactful are rate limiting and media, generally things around media, how you order it, how you identify whether you need to pull all the media again by using some sort of checksumming. Those will have big impact as we go forward, so I would encourage people to engage and try and be part of it. The worst thing of all is you get surprised when you find out you actually have to implement something. And of course, all of our chairs and subgroup chairs get together and we talk about what are we doing to build the roadmap for next year. We do execute against a roadmap. Josh tries to keep us on task and make sure we don't wander too far off that roadmap. And we should see an update. We usually get it done sometime in February. We've already got quite a bit of it underway, but it usually shakes out by about mid-February, and you'll see it up on the discussion page or in our next conference, or we'll at least highlight it in our next conference, in-person conference. As mentioned, we've got these topics that have been cooking out there for a little while. One that I think is quite germane for many people is rate limiting. We had a lot of discussion about rate limiting a while ago, so most client vendors hit these very quickly at some point. You'll get a MLS update of 1 million records, and your rate is 5,000 records an hour. Or you don't know what your rate limit is, but you keep hitting it, and you have to try to figure out how you can get all that data within your rate limits. So having some way of advertising it, allowing people to know how they get around it, or whether it's even possible to get around it without contacting the vendor to say, hey, you guys made a big change, we're never going to catch up, how about you change the rate limits for the short period of time where we need to catch up. So I think that's one of the ones that we'll definitely be making some efforts around. We've talked about internationalization, that's a work in progress. And entity events, I think, are starting to get a little bit more traction as we see people going, well, in Pain Points the other day on Tuesday, Bill Boyer brought up the question of, how do I know this record disappeared? Well, entity events is a way that you can advertise things happening that your security may not permit you to see. And so we think there's a couple things we can do to enhance the entity event standard portion of it to allow some additional entity types and some filtering types on it so that you can actually say, hey, it disappeared, you need to contact the MLS to find out why, and help people like Bill solve those problems that he's facing. Any questions before we move forward? Okay, that's pretty standard stuff for most folks that have been here. Updates since our last in-person meeting. We've been quite busy since the last in-person meeting addressing some policy changes. We had some confusion, some impedance mismatch between Data Dictionary and Transport over what and how versions got tagged and what they meant and how we would help people. I've been describing this week as we figured out how to go faster and slower at the same time. Many vendors have long cycles on the server side where they may be 18 months on a major change to get it communicated out to their customers, the MLSs. The MLSs then have to communicate it out to the vendors that consume the MLS data, and by the time it's all done, you suddenly are at 18 months. You know, a 6-month change at the server vendor requires another 6 months of rolling it out and getting it communicated out to all the parties. That needs another 6 months for the client vendors to get stuff done. So we want to make sure that we can move as fast as we can, but not break things. And we think we've solved this, where we can do minor data changes that do not break existing systems without it going through board ratification, starting the clock for recertification. And those minor changes should allow a 2.0 to work with 2.1 data and not require recertification between 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. But there will be other things that we have put in here that will impact you around certification. So we all agreed that minor changes to the standard, whether it's transport or data dictionary, will not break existing systems. Major version changes will break systems potentially and will probably require some rework, so we want to be very careful about those and make sure that we give lots of warning to everybody so they know. We've got a paper around this. Most of you who've done a lot of software development know about semantic versioning. That's the model we're following. Major, minor patch. Patch, of course, is a trivial change, spelling mistake fix, something like that. Definition that wasn't clear enough. Minor changes are usually additive, so they're very unlikely to break things. So we've got a couple of things that do break things on the data dictionary side. Data dictionaries had a desire for a little while to allow a path to more standard naming. So if we add a duplicate element, so there's two data elements, deliver the same data with different names, that's going to be a major version change, a breaking change. The good news is you can implement these before the testing is ready, roll them out and have them in the field, but you have to continue to push the same data point in the current standard data field. So you push it in two places, but you're only getting tested on the one. And then when we do the major change, you won't get tested on the old one anymore, you'll get tested on the new one. So it helps vendors who've had the concern that the data dictionary really needs this change. We want to roll it out right now, and then when they go to get tested, they fail because they don't have the data in the old place. So now we've made it clearer that you must carry it in the old place, and you can carry it in the new place in a previous version. And a future version, you must carry it in the new place. And we won't test the old place. So going faster while going slower, in a sense. We also clarified what happens when we take it to certification and how that goes forward. Obviously, if we add new testing rules that we have thought up that we didn't have before, it's entirely possible it will break somebody who's already out there. And so those new testing rules will be deferred until we do the major change so that those vendors can catch up. However, when we're adding new data elements, there's no reason that a 2.0 to 2.1 change can't have new rules added for this new added data element, because the 2.0 will still pass because it's not carrying the new data element, whereas 2.1 does carry the new data element. So we thought that was a compromise that would work. And the other thing we clarified is we're not going to keep 2.0, 2.1, 2.2 certifications. We're certifying on the latest minor version only on a given major version. It does impact the folks in the fast track work group. Many of their changes are breaking changes, and they will be required in the next major version, but they will start getting warnings beforehand. And here's the big one, and everyone should pay attention and possibly even write it down. You heard Almon mentioning that many vendors had fallen behind on certification, and they were drifting out of compliance with certification. So the new policy, which I believe has already been approved by the board is that endorsements expire after 2 years. So this clock will start ticking in 2026. So this impacts everyone in this room, everyone on the Zoom, and a whole bunch of people who probably aren't either place. This seems a reasonable way if our desire is for more standards, more compliance, more interoperability. You need to keep up. And we're trying very, very hard to encourage everybody to incorporate some of the certification tools in their development workflows, so you're not doing all the development and then throwing it over the wall and hoping the best for certification, that you have been continuously certifying locally in your development stack so that when it comes time to certify, it should be very easy. And we'll talk more about this later, and we do need input on how that tool gets written to help developers and vendors do this work. But I really want everyone to pay attention to this because we're raising the bar again, and don't get surprised. So hopefully everyone out there in Zoom land is, or streaming land is paying attention as well, because this is kind of important. I think we'll also talk about a communications path to make sure that everybody gets made aware of this, that they need to keep up their certifications, because it's that important. So we also, in this policy and certification updates, we clarified what a major change in the data dictionary looks like. I'm not going to read this all to you because that's not very interesting, but we thought very hard about what this meant, and it took an awful lot of meetings to iron out all the details. And I'd encourage you to read the versioning document, which is about 4 slides back. If you're at all impacted by versioning or you need to go through certification testing, you need to read the document and just make sure you fully understand what happens when there's a change in the data dictionary and how it might impact your system and the certification of your system going forward. So that's 2 things you need to remember. Keep track of the data dictionary, because they're working on a spreadsheet. They do have differences between versions, so it should be easy for you to see and understand how versioning works. It should be fairly straightforward for most of you in a technical position. This is a fairly standard way to approach versioning. It's not something we made up. It's been used in the industry, the software development industry, for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So we're using what best practices are in the industry, but you need to pay attention to those 2 things. Data dictionary spreadsheet and the versioning documentation. A little bit more on the meaning of a minor data dictionary change. And I mentioned before, patches are basically, it shouldn't impact your certification, it shouldn't impact interoperability. It might clarify the definition of a field or of the warning that you get when that field is doing something out of spec, so to speak. Look, we made a slide and it's got big words on it. You really, really, really need to pay attention to this, because it is actually quite important for anyone writing a server system that is going to emit data that needs to be certified. You have to read the document. We've got it linked in 2 different places. You have to pay attention to the data dictionary spreadsheet. So those 2 things are really important, and I will probably say it 3 more times. But I'm not going to say the word. Oh, never mind. You guys have heard it already too many times, this conference. And if you didn't know what word I was going to say, come and ask me later, because, the pub sub, activity pub group, man, this is a hard one for me, because pub sub is a thing and activity pub is the name, and I always say it, activity pub sub. It's the activity pub subgroup. Inside of this, there's the unique license identifier. Actually, this is a wrong label, I think. This is the ULI. So this is the resolution protocol for licensees so that you can figure out, can I deduplicate these 2 state licenses? I actually had an interesting conversation with a fellow yesterday who's done some of this work and has some thoughts about some of the deduplication challenges that he's faced with his license data. Turns out a couple people don't even have IDs. It's just your legal name. That's your license. It's your legal name. Yeah, that's what I said, John. It's like, oh no. But Josh has done a lot of work around this and has the tooling in place to provide this resolution, and it's meant to be distributed to places, and you can use it internally, but RESO is also going to advertise the resolvers, those people who are resolving license data. And here's a very low resolution ULI match that's matching 2 ULI requests and asking it across multiple resolvers. So if you're interested in that kind of resolution, please look at the slides, which will be posted so that you can view them on a larger screen than this projected screen here which is more like an eye test from the back of the room. But just the short answer is, from this we can see a single ULI match with information from NAR with a potential match. And then the creation on the right side is a creation of a ULI. So, any questions? Because that was a little bit deep dive there. The Activity Pub subgroup, you heard Chris talk about it yesterday. They've carved out some ideas around using this Activity Pub standard to handle things like transaction management and offer management. And they've got a proposal around this for, essentially it's like a chat, like a threaded discussion for transaction management. And that's the RCP for it. The link is live if you have the slides, or when you get the slides, so you'll be able to look at it. You can also look at it inside of the GitHub repository for the RESO organization. Any questions on this? Because this one might have questions. Okay, well, we're going to be done before the break if we keep it this rate. So as I mentioned, they're going to focus, and Transport's going to support them in this offers management first. Offer seems like the simplest possible business case that the group could come up with. But it does provide an opportunity for people interested in creating new business arms. That could be a vendor or an MLS, an offer management hub where you can funnel all the offers on a particular property into one place. And the question that we have is, we want to understand, both in Transport and the subgroup, how are people currently handling it? And so this is more a question to you. If you are handling offer managements, we're looking for input and feedback on this so that we can design the most appropriate technical standard around offer management that we can. So input is actively being sought. Just a quick question, does anybody here have an offer management system running? I don't see anyone. Jay, do you have one? You do. Okay, so Josh will probably be reaching out to you and asking for a little bit of information about it, and maybe get some input for you to attend one or more sessions of the Activity Pub group and talk about how you guys are doing it. So, anybody on this side? I'm kind of looking into the sun here. I don't see any hands. Oh, sorry, I don't see any hands. All right, so we've got at least one. Hopefully Jason made a note of, okay, great. Here's the sort of idea that we're thinking of. It's a simple lightweight transaction. There's a little bit of the workflow. You know, it's accepting offers. We've got a new listing, and then we've got some offers coming in. And it's basically a threaded discussion like you'd see on, well, almost any social media platform. We don't really have this kind of layer on top of our standards, which is how collaboration could happen on these sorts of things. My experience with offer management has been telephones, and they tend to be very sloppy, and depending on the agent, they work well. But when you start getting multiple, like large numbers of multiple offers, like 6, 8, 10, things don't seem to go quite as well. So this is the conceptual overview of what they're hoping this standard could do, something like this. And again, Activity Pub is an existing standard that is used for this kind of threaded discussion that they're adding on as another layer to our standard. So we're not inventing this. All right. Any questions on the updates on from the last meeting? Is there anything that you feel that was discussed at the last meeting that you thought should be handled or at least started on that we haven't done? And we'll talk more about those things that seem to be slipping through the cracks and add some new processes to address those.